We are back. We are back. Welcome to There's No Crying in Fantasy. This is episode 8. We are in week 7. I have a special guest this week. One of our guests, Brian, is injured. So we want to wish him a speedy recovery. He fractured his leg a couple of weeks ago. So his big brother is stepping in this week, Phil. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Got some
How's it
big shoes to
going?
fill. I got some big shoes to fill. You know how
Yes, you
Brian do.
do.
You know how
Yes,
Brian do.
Yes, you do. So around the league, we had a lot that went on week 6. And week 7 is a big week because we are facing bye weeks, which we'll get into in a second. We had some injuries that came up. Of course, the biggest one I think we'll talk about is Kareem Hunt. And then also some players that went on IR this week. You had Clyde Edwards-Helaire that went on IR. You also had it's slipping my mind now. Christian McCaffrey went on IR after being out for
Yeah.
probably 2 to 3 weeks, so that's a huge blow. And then you have some players that are coming off of IR. Jarvis Landry's coming off of IR, and there's a few others that were designated for return. Rashad Bateman is also coming back. You have some players that are coming up like Jeff Wilson with the San Francisco 49ers that are coming back. So those are just some things to look for as we approach week 7.
Mhm.
Phil, what are you looking for this week?
I mean, there's a lot going on, like you said. I mean, don't forget Judy. I mean, had so much potential after week one. We saw what he did. So he's another one that possibly can be back. So definitely seeing him. I like what I saw out of Bateman the first week. I mean, he definitely ran some good routes. He looked good out there. So hopefully we can see some more out of him this week.
Yeah, and then also T.Y. Hilton came back as well this week, so that was
But he got hurt again because that's a Ty way.
a so so after talking about the injuries, I think the biggest waiver wire pickup, and let's get into the waiver wire pickups for this week, is Dearness Johnson for Cleveland. I mean, if you need a running back right now, and I think a lot of people need running backs headed into bye weeks, Dearness Johnson is your biggest pickup. What do you think?
I think he definitely is the biggest pickup, but I also think that he has a tough matchup. Denver is not a weak front. I think they're gonna definitely put some work in against. I think if you need a running back, he's a live body and he's warm. I guess you have no choice but to use him. They said Chubb has a slight chance, but I highly doubt that's gonna happen.
Yeah, and then also
What do you
I
think?
think Dearness Johnson, but I also think Dimitri Felton is going to be. I think Dimitri Felton is going to be more used in the pass game, like Hunt was, and I think he may be the more valuable PPR back to use for this week if you need it back.
Yeah,
So do you have
I agree
anybody?
100% with you because I think they're gonna be. Yeah, I have a couple guys, and I think they're sleeper guys. I don't think they're guys that's going to be on people's radars. I think someone I was thinking about was, and I like what I saw out of him. I mean, from last year, even this year, he played, I believe, Sunday night, was Travis Homer. I mean, I think out of nowhere, he put up some solid numbers. I mean, he didn't play a lot, but when he played, he showed some explosiveness, in my opinion. I think he might be somebody that people can look at. You're going to need bodies, so many bodies. So I think that's somebody people could think about possibly in a deeper league to pick up.
Yeah, so
And
actually, this is pretty early. Shout out to Brian who just logged on, and then also we got a question about Ricky Seals Jones. Is he worth a pickup? And how do we feel now? How do we feel now that we are
okay.
6 weeks in about A Rob 12? We're gonna get into A Rob in just a second, actually. So that's a good topic. But Ricky Seals Jones is worth a pickup. I actually picked up Ricky Seals Jones against Kansas City. He got 5 targets and a TD. So I think Ricky Seals Jones is going to be used heavily in that Washington pass game, and I think he's a worthy pickup if he's out there on your wire because tight ends have just been terrible this year. So if you can find one that's actually producing, I say pick him up, put him in your lineup.
I'd say, I mean, RSJ, I mean, for years, I mean, it's been like 3, 4 years I've been talking about him, and I think he's a poor man's Kyle Pitts. I think this guy definitely, he was a wide receiver in college. He came out, never had the opportunity, and I think since he's had the opportunity since, what's his name went down? What's his name? What's the tight end name from Washington? Logan. Since Logan's gone down, he's definitely been doing it. I mean, he's been a red zone target. Like you said, he's been having targets. I think he had 9 targets last week or something. So I think he's definitely if you're going to get a tight end with 9 targets, you're going to want him because tight ends are so hard to come by. I picked him up in a couple leagues, just like you said. I think he's definitely a good guy to fill in. I think he's going to move up the echelon of tight ends in the coming weeks.
So let me ask you a question, and before I get to one of the comments, with tight ends, are we at a point right now where you stream tight ends and you play the matchup? Is that where we're at with tight end? If you don't have one of the top 3 to 5 tight ends,
if you don't have Waller, you don't have Kelsey, you got to stream. I think Dawson Schultz has shown some good things, but I think unless you have one of those top 2 or 3 guys, you have to stream.
So
go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll give you an example. So I had Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas is obviously out with a hamstring injury. I looked at the matchups. Houston was playing Indy last week. Houston was number 1 against tight ends. So I played Mo Alley Cox. Mo Alley Cox got 1 target, 1 catch, but he got the TD. So he put up like 10 points, and that's valuable for tight end production this year, unfortunately. So go ahead.
I like that, the Mo Alley Cox. He's a red zone target. He's been that for like a couple of years now. I think he's definitely someone. If you're looking for tight end and you're streaming tight end, you're hoping for that touchdown, and he's been a touchdown machine in the last couple of years. I don't like the guy. I don't like his game, but I think he definitely is someone that you should be thinking about. I do have another pickup this week that I think would be good, and people may not be sleeping on it. One guy I'm thinking about at wide receiver is Russell Gage. I mean, he got drafted in every league, but he got hurt, and now he's supposed to be coming back either this week or next week. I mean, he's on a lot of waiver wires out there. I think Calvin Ridley, we still don't know his status. They say he's back at practice, but who knows? I think Matt Ryan's been playing good at the quarterback. I think Russell Gage is somebody we should be looking at if we're looking for a wide receiver this week.
I like that. It's just so hard to trust Russell Gage, but I think he's a valuable pickup being in that offense. One that I'm going to talk about is that I think is going to come on is Allen Lazard. With MVS out, it seems like Allen Lazard is the second receiver in that offense. We haven't seen Robert Tonyan step into the role that we thought he was going to have last year. So I think Allen Lazard could be a key pickup if you need wide receiver depth. And then the most obvious wide receiver pickup for this week, I think, is Donovan Peoples-Jones. 6 targets. I think he had 4 or 5 catches, over 100 yards. Half of that yards was off of the Hail Mary, but he had 2 TDs. And he seems like he's one of Baker's favorite targets, because the chemistry just isn't there with Odell. Yes, Landry is coming back, but I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be key for some lineups that need wide receiver depth through bye weeks and coming down the stretch. We did get a question, so let's get into this question. We did talk about this. Dearness Johnson, what are your thoughts of his value if Chubb doesn't play? I like Dearness Johnson. I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch with him and Demetric Felton, but we know the Browns like to run the ball. The volume's going to be there. I think if he's there, he's your number 1 pickup for this week if you need a running back, especially with the bye weeks.
Absolutely number 1 pickup. The thing with me that I think I like Felton a little better, just because I think Felton's going to have the game script's going to be in his favor. I mean, playing against Denver, it's going to be hard to run the football. I mean, Denver's not Tampa Bay against the run, but Denver has a good front. So it's going to be really tough to run against Denver. So I think if I'm going to pick somebody, just because, like you said, the volume, he's going to get at least 12 to 15 touches out of the backfield. All you have to do is break one or fall in the end zone. So definitely the guy I would pick up is Dearness Johnson, just because he's going to get the most touches out of anybody on that waiver wire. But Felton, I think the game script might be beneficial to him.
Yep. And one last one. This is kind of like a dart throw, but I hate the Miami Dolphins run game. But it seems like Gaskin is being phased out.
Yep.
And Salvin Ahmed is starting to come on. If he's out there, I would pick him up. I probably wouldn't start him right away, but I would see exactly how they're using him.
100%.
That's another one that I've been looking at.
I see you've been doing your homework. You're in the lab.
So let's talk about bye week blues. I think this is one of the biggest weeks that we have coming up for bye weeks. There's a lot of teams that are on bye this week. How are you approaching bye weeks? And if you have lineups where you have multiple players out?
I mean, the way I approach bye weeks, I start preparing from the week, like 2 weeks before. Like, I'm already looking at next week and seeing who's on bye. There's 2 teams on bye next week, so it's not so bad. I believe Oakland is one of the teams that's on bye, and I think Baltimore. So if you have somebody, I think this is when you start looking at the waiver wire because some people are going to have people on the teams that's on the bye this week, and might be looking to drop them. So after the waivers run, you got to start thinking about, let me see if somebody was drops, because that's the time for you to pick up that play that's going to replace your guy for next week. So that's one of the ways I truly look at it. But I think the biggest thing is this week you have the most bye weeks, and even if you prepared, it's going to be tough to replace, especially with all the running back that's hurt and all the injuries. It's going to be a tough one. But you have to prepare at least a week in advance, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you have some teams that have notable fantasy starters that are out. Like Minnesota, you have out. Dallas, you have out. Pittsburgh, you have out. I think Jacksonville is out. James Robinson. Marvin Jones has become a fantasy starter on that team, and Laviska Shenault. So it's just about how you approach it. We do have another question from Daniel here about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has become a weekly starter. Do you think he's still a fringe of someone you can put together 4 straight great weeks? Joe Burrow, and I've been starting Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has put up 20-plus points every week except for, I think, one. And when we look at Joe Burrow, if you have somebody who is on a bye week, if Joe Burrow is out there, definitely go pick him up, because what we look for in fantasy with a quarterback is, what does their wide receiver core look like? Are they using them in the pass game very often? Joe Burrow has one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL, probably besides, I would say, maybe 5 other teams. Joe Burrow is putting up, I think, 275 plus yardage, maybe 2 TDs a week. So, I mean, why not start the guy if he's out there? So that's somebody I'm looking at. From a running back perspective, we just mentioned one, Salvin Ahmed, Dearness Johnson. If you have people on your bench who you may not start, who are fringe starters, there are like Kenyon Drake, who looks like he's starting to come on with this new coach. I don't know if they're going to continue to use him, but I like what I saw coming out of that game against Denver, encouraged usage. So there are probably some guys on your bench that you can put in as well. What about you, Phil?
I mean, I agree. I think, are we still talking about Joe Burrow? I think Joe Burrow has such potential. I mean, he came out of college and he was a top pick, obviously. And I think going into the draft, everyone was drafting him. He was the late round sleeper, and he's shown why he was that late round sleeper, because he's producing numbers. I mean, I think he's a little banged up right now, but I think he's still going to produce. Like you said, he has 3 solid receivers. I mean, Jamar Chase has been incredible. I mean, what more can we say about him? I mean, the guy's been about 100 yards almost every game, and he's catching deep passes. He's keeping Joe Burrow's efficiency up. I think we can't go wrong with him. Joe Burrow is a really good, solid good bye week fill-in, or even your main starter. Another guy that people forget about is Derrick Cross. I'm not a Raiders fan, like my brother, obviously, but he's been putting up numbers. He's the number 2. He has the number 2 passer in the league right now. He has the second most yards. I mean, how could you turn that down? And the touchdowns will continue to come. I like what I'm seeing after Gruden's left. I think they opened up the offense for him a little more. If you see Brian Edwards is running these deep routes, Henry Ruggs is running deep routes, these guys are ballers. I think Derrick Cross is going to have a big second half. And this year might be the Raiders' year of, obviously, for the first time in a while, making the playoffs and possibly going deep because of Derek Carr.
Yeah, and I like that pick with Derek Carr as well. And Derek Carr I think Derek Carr's a weekly starter because you see what he's done with Waller. Henry Ruggs looks like he's improved from last year, which I don't think anybody thought was going to happen. But
and then they have Drake. Like you just said, they have Drake, and he's catching passes.
Right, and now they're using Drake. But I'll say this about bye weeks: don't be the guy that just plays whoever is on your bench because you have him. Look for opportunities with bye weeks. Look for matchups. Read the injury reports. If there's a player that's out that you think volume is going to be there for another player that may be on the waiver wire, pick up that player. But don't be the guy that just puts somebody in. Actually look for matchups that you think you can exploit with bye weeks coming up with some players who may be kind of overlooked on the waiver wire where the opportunity may be there. Anything else you got to say about the bye weeks?
I think you said a lot about the bye, and I think you're absolutely right. Bye weeks is when you play the matchups. A lot of people stream, like, say, defenses, and you basically look for matchups. And I say the same thing for bye weeks. You have to look for those matchups. You got to see where you can take advantage. You can have a backup running back like someone like, per se, we didn't talk about this guy because I think he's rostered in a lot of leagues. J.D. McKissick, he's a backup running back, but based on his matchup, if Washington's getting blown out, he's going to probably score 15 points because the game script's going to call for him to catch the ball out of the backfield. So I think if you say that's the kind of thing you have to look at when you have a bye week is who has those matchups that's going to be game script conducive, you know?
Yep, I agree. So let's get into our next topic, and that is what to do with your injured studs. So like if you drafted C-Mac number 1 right now, you've been without him for 3 weeks. You're going to be without him for another 3 weeks. Let's say you drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Chris Carson. What are you doing with these players right now that are on IR or, just out of your lineup? They're not holding any value right now. They're not helping you win weeks. How are you approaching this situation?
I think it all depends on your record. You have to think about what you're doing. If you still have a good record without those guys, which is tough because like I have CMC in the league and I'm not doing it that good with him on my bench. I ended up getting Chuba Hubbard, but he's not CMC. He's not putting up 25 points a game. He's putting up 12, 13. That's not game winning weeks. I mean, it's not going to win you get weeks. So if you don't have a good record, I think you kind of have to look for a trade. Like for instance, I got an example like. I have CMC and someone offered me Kamara and somebody else, but wants CMC and Hubbard. It's a trade I'm considering doing because Kamara's not CMC, but Kamara's could win you a league, you know? So if you can get something, what's that?
If somebody's offering me all day, like I'm taking that.
Exactly. So it's something that you should have to consider, but it also depends on your record. If say you're 3-2. Do you want to make a deal? Probably, because you're probably going to lose this week if you don't make a deal. But if you're like 4-1 or 5-1 or say 4-2, you might think against it because CMC should be back in hopefully 3 weeks, and at that point, even if you're 4-4, CMC is going to be able to take you to the promised land if he's healthy. You know.
So here's how I'm approaching CMC, and I have him in one league. And I'm actually holding on to him. I'm 4-2 in that league right now. But I also have to take into consideration CMC has not hit his bye week. So you're going to have another week plus the 3 weeks without him that you may need to win. I would say if you have a losing record or you're like, 3-3, it would be valuable to approach the trade and see what you can get for CMC. I'm not trading CMC for like a Josh Jacobs or anything like that. I'm not giving him away for free. But I would definitely approach, let's say, if I feel like I can upgrade my wide receiver depth. If you have Tyreek Hill and maybe you're frustrated with Tyreek Hill. If you have Devontae Adams and you feel like you can add on to your running back depth by getting CMC, I'm floating that offer out to all those players saying, hey, CMC is available. Looking for a way that can win me weeks immediately. And I would actually offer CMC maybe with another player if I could get back a Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill, somebody who is going to impact my weeks to help me win on a week basis. I'll take it, because CMC owner, if you are 3-3 or 2-4, you're just trying to win weeks to get to the playoffs right now.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with you. Like I said, I'm down in that league, so I'm looking to make a trade because he's not going to win you. He's not going to win you games on the bench, and you could have Hubbard. Hubbard's not Alexander Madison, so like Dalvin Cook goes down. Alexander Madison is going to win you weeks, but that's not Hubbard, not yet anyway. So like even last year when CMC was out, Mike Davis is doing really good, but I haven't seen it from Hubbard. So if you have a stud and the replacement is not worthy, you have to look to make a deal because you're not going to go anywhere. Your first round pick goes down; it's hard to replace.
We got a viewer question, and this comes from Darius. What should you do if you're 0-6 in redraft?
You better trade your studs. You gotta trade 2-for-1s because you gotta recreate that team. You gotta recreate that team because if you're not recreating that team, you're just gonna continue to fall. You're gonna be 0-8 before you know it. The deal has to happen like before this week starts because if not, it's over. It's
I think
over.
you have to evaluate your team, and I also have to in this situation. I think you have to look at what your point totals are. Are you scoring a lot of points week to week, or are you getting crushed? If you're just getting crushed by like teams that are putting up record numbers on you week to week, I think you stick with what you got. But if your team is not performing the way that it's supposed to perform, I think you need to explore the trade market and see if you can improve your team somehow. Maybe a two, try to get a stud, somebody that can help you increase your performance week to week. So thanks,
I,
Derek. Thanks.
I agree with that, but I also think that you kind of have to still make a move because you have to change something. The dynamic has to change on that team because if you keep going out with the same thing, yeah, you might be unlucky, but you never know. You could if you have a stud player, I don't know, like say Dalvin Cook on your team. If you can get two good players for Dalvin Cook, that could be a difference maker for you. You know, because if you're failing to win games, although you have points, that means you have a deficiency somewhere else on your team. Like you could have five good players, but the other four are bad. I mean, you have to get that depth on your team to hopefully bring you over that hump. In
Yeah.
my opinion,
Yep. So
oh
let's.
06 is it's tough to get out of. It's almost like you can't come out.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
best of luck to Darius. We hope your season gets better. But thanks for the viewer question. Also, let's talk about droppable players. So that goes into a team that's underperforming. Who is a stud on your team that is underperforming that you would consider dropping? Well, not even a stud, but just a player that you may have drafted, let's say first 5 rounds, that you would consider dropping right now.
One person I definitely would say is somebody like Miles Sanders. I mean, he's underperformed. It's hard to trust him. He looked better the last couple weeks because I think they're running the ball a little more. But I also like what I'm seeing out of Kenneth Gainwell. Now, if he doesn't perform, he might lose that job. Like I picked up Kenneth Gainwell in a couple of places. I think that he has an opportunity to possibly get that job if Miles Sanders doesn't start performing soon. I mean, I think the coach in Philly, I'm not sure what he's doing because he's not running the ball as much because they have had some success. But are they going to continue to run it? I mean, what's your thoughts, Sanders?
Yeah, from Sanders, I'm holding Miles Sanders, but he line up. Unfortunately, it's not a situation that I think he can be in your lineup week to week that you can trust to help you win a week. They have proven that they can't run the ball. They're unwilling to run the ball, and that he's not going to be in the offense like we thought he was going to be after them. One player that I'm looking at, and this is the one that everybody's screaming, is A-Rob. We're getting a lot of comments about A-Rob right now. A-Rob is droppable to me. I would explore the trade market first to see if somebody maybe needs a bye week replacement with A-Rob. Maybe you can get something back. Somebody has somebody that's on bye week this week. But A-Rob is just not involved like we thought he was. I personally did not draft A-Rob. I didn't want him. I didn't like the quarterback situation. He's with a rookie quarterback that the coach wasn't really willing to commit to. And then also Andy Dalton is – so it's like it's not a great for A-Rob. It's just weird because with Mitchell Trubisky, he was producing. But with a quarterback like Andy Dalton, he's just not producing at all. And I think it's just the offense. The offense stinks. They can't get anything going. So A-Rob, to me, if you can't get a trade for him, you can find a better replacement for A-Rob right now. Anybody else that
Let me ask you a question though about A-Rob. Can I ask you a question about A-Rob?
Yeah.
No, can I ask you a question about A-Rob though? Because I know you said you'd consider dropping him. I mean, I thought the same thing. I do have some shares of A-Rob, but when you think about it, if you have a receiver that's getting 6 to 7 targets a game, is that somebody you would want to drop? Honestly,
it's somebody that I would. It depends on the league. If you're in a 10-team league, droppable, like definitely droppable.
yeah,
If you're in a 12-team league, I think you bury him on your bench until you need him for like a bye week or something, or you explore the trade market. I'm exploring the trade market for A-Rob if I have him, but
let's think about
droppable.
Can we just think about A-Rob's team for a minute? When you think about Darnell Mooney, who's probably been the best receiver on that team right now, right? He's getting single coverage. And Justin Fields, as much as we want to say negative things about him not being a great quarterback, he's been getting better as weeks progress. Now it's starting to open up a little more for A-Rob because now they're not double teaming as much. And A-Rob in the past, he's had Blake Bortles throwing the ball to him. He hasn't traditionally thrown the ball, and he's always been a stud. So if you believe in his talent, I think you kind of still have to hold on to him for maybe 2 more weeks, just because he can start to explode. If Justin Fields gets better, if Montgomery gets better, and we saw really good stuff out of Khalil. What's the running back that ran?
Herbert.
Khalil, I can't. Herbert, yes. He looked really good. If the running game gets better, it's going to open for A-Rod. And I think A-Rod is so talented. He's done it with weaker quarterbacks, in my opinion. I think he has the opportunity to get better.
Here's my issue with the target fallacy.
I wouldn't drop him.
Here's my issue with the target fallacy. All targets are not equal. All targets are not accurate. It doesn't matter if he's getting 6 or 7 targets if the targets are not on point. And the problem with Fields and the rest of the quarterbacks with Chicago is they are inaccurate. They don't have enough time with that line to get the ball down the field and get it downfield accurately. That's my only issue with A-Rod. Like I said, 12-team league, 14-team league, he's on my bench. I'm exploring trade options. 10-team league, I'm dropping him. One person that I'm exploring is Robbie Anderson. I think Robbie Anderson is droppable right now. 10-team league, 12-team league, I think he's droppable. He's not getting the target.
I agree 100%.
He's not getting the targets. He's not involved in the offense. He's not scoring the touchdowns that he scored last year. I think Robbie Anderson is droppable on your team.
I agree 100% with that. He's, like you said, he's not doing anything. And everybody had high hopes for him. He had Sam Darnold coming over there, and everyone knew he had a connection with Sam on the Jets, and nothing's happened. I mean, he's truly droppable. I mean, if I had him, he'd be dropped a long time ago. Let's get rid of him.
Shout out to Hill. Say less about Robbie, cuz boy. Yeah, Robbie Anderson.
Shout out to Hill.
So let's get into the next topic, and that's the QB matchups for Week 7. Which QB matchups are you looking at for this week, especially with bye weeks coming up?
You want me to talk about guys that we know are good, or middle of the road guys, or you want to talk about keeper guys?
Middle of the road guys that you think are on your way.
Because I have on the waiver wire.
Yeah.
Or not waiver wire. On the waiver wire, I mean, I think Matty Ice is definitely one of them. I think he's on everybody's waiver wire. What's his matchup? I don't remember who he's playing. Just looking at him too. Can't remember who he's playing. Oh, he's playing Miami. So he has a really good matchup. If Cal really comes back this week, I mean, it's gonna be over for he's gonna have a really good week. He's been playing really good. He's been scoring about 25 fantasy points a week in the last, I think, 3 weeks. I think he's due for a very, very big game. And we just spoke about another one that I have. It's Justin Fields. You may not like him so much. You may think he's inaccurate. The game script's going to be in his favor. He's playing Tampa. Tampa's secondary is very broken right now. They got a lot of injuries to that secondary. They're not going to be able to run the ball against him. So Herbert, as much as he looked good this week, he's not going to look good this week coming up. So I think if you play Justin Fields, you have a chance for a 25-point game. He's gonna have to throw a ball, and they're gonna be down by a lot. So he's gonna throw a ball, and we're talking about fantasy football. If we're talking about real football, yeah, he's trash, but he's gonna be throwing football. He's gonna be borderlining his way to a big game.
Yeah, mine for this week is I'm going with Tua this week. Tua's going against Atlanta. He, as iffy as he looked against Jacksonville last week, he still put up 25 points. Tua's good for a couple yards on the ground. Atlanta is like one of the worst defenses against quarterbacks and wide receivers. So if I need a quarterback for this week, I'm going with Tua. And then my second week is Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance has a chance to put up some good fantasy usage against Indy this week. Indy's going to San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken. And also, Indy's secondary has not been great. Of course, they have Darius Leonard in that front seven, but the secondary has not been great. I think Trey Lance can have a big game against Indy this week. So those are the two I'm looking for on my waiver wire for this week. Anybody else that you have?
I mean, there's a couple guys you could think about. Heineke, I think the game script's going to be in his favor, so he might be somebody that you think about. Green Bay is going to be winning by a lot, so I like to look at guys that the game script is going to be in their favor because they're going to have no choice but to throw. He might throw 2 interceptions, but he also might throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, I think those kind of guys, when you know they're going to be losing by a lot, the second half is going to be theirs to go up. Blake Bortles. That's what Blake Bortles lived his life for. I won a fantasy championship with Blake Bortles as my quarterback because he basically got all the garbage time points, and I think that's what Heineke's going to have. We said RSJ is going to be good. We have Terry McLaurin there, and Samuels is supposed to come back. So he has 3 pretty solid targets, and McKissick catches the passes, and he's looked good out of the backfield. So I think Heineke could be a deep sleeper guy.
I'm not touching Heineke.
I mean, with all the buys this week, somebody's going to touch Heineke.
The problem we have such high expectations, and especially with the game against Kansas City, I thought Heineke was going to be a lot better than he was, and he was terrible. So I'm a little iffy starting Heineke this week against Green Bay, but we'll see. But
when you're down 28-0, I mean, what are you going to do?
I agree, but it's just so hard for me to trust Heineke. But that's all that we have for this week. Anything else you wanted to talk about, Phil?
No, man, I appreciate you having. Shout out to everyone else today. I appreciate that. And that's pretty much it, man. Shout out to Hill, Cannon, and AJ. Thanks for letting me fill in, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining. And once again, rest up, Brian. We'll see you soon. And Phil, thanks for joining the show. So week 7, good luck to everybody. And we'll see you next week for week 8.
Peace.
Peace.